Coffee Lake is Intel's newest revision in their 14nm architecture called 14nm++. This means that it's pretty much the same CPU, they just manufactured it better. Aside from the number 8 leading the SKUs in the Coffee Lake lineup, the naming schemes are pretty much exactly what we saw with Skylake and Kaby Lake. As far as real-world tangible improvements with this better manufacturing process, Coffee Lake chips are more power efficient by a small amount and can run at higher clock speeds. Also, according to independent thermal results, it looks like Intel may have improved their thermal interface material for Coffee Lake. If you remember, the TIM in Kaby Lake was so bad that Intel responded to complaints by saying, "Don't overclock," which is just ridiculous. TIM allows for better heat transfer between the die and the heat spreader on the CPU. Better TIM allows for lower temperatures when all else is held constant. Considering Coffee Lake's further increase in power requirements with the increase in cores, TIM improvement is needed even more than already was when the problems became known in Kaby Lake. So with Coffee Lake, Intel is boasting significant performance improvements, but in their numbers they sort of ignore the fact that they've also added 2 more cores. When you just look at improvements in single-threaded performance, it's about on par with what we've seen in previous generational increments in this architecture, increasing by just a few percent. Being a refinement rather than a completely new architecture indicates that Coffee Lake should fit the same sockets as Skylake and Kaby Lake, but that's not the case, not in any way that matters. Coffee Lake still uses an LGA 1151 socket, but the pins are routed differently, so it's incompatible with previous generations. Intel is requiring a completely new motherboard with Coffee Lake for their 300 series chipset. They're citing increased power requirements from the extra cores and a RAM base clock increase from 2133 to 2666 as their justification for this unpopular move. Since Coffee Lake already requires a new motherboard, I expect and encourage those of you who are looking to upgrade at this point to consider both Coffee Lake and Ryzen as an option as well. If you're going to change your motherboard anyway, why not look at other platforms? With Ryzen, you get 2 extra multi-threaded cores that are also more power efficient for $50 less than the 8700K. And you can also very likely get a motherboard that's also cheaper. Also, the Ryzen platform with the AM4 socket is supposed to be supported for about 4 more years, which is much more longevity in Ryzen's platform than we can reasonably expect from Intel. Even though this launch is clearly in response to Ryzen, it seems like Intel isn't really paying attention to what Ryzen provides. Coffee Lake is still more expensive, has fewer cores, and a higher power requirement than its Ryzen equivalent. Said in those words, it sounds exactly like the situation we had when Ryzen released when we compared it to Kaby Lake. But in this case, Coffee Lake has an even higher IPC, and the core count is closing the gap. However, pricing has also increased, and aside from the i5-8400, which is actually incredible value-wise, there really aren't any other value-oriented chips in the Coffee Lake lineup so far. If you're doing a purely gaming build and you're going for the absolute best performance with relatively no price limit, than it is as it has been for the past several years. Intel's single-threaded lead is still there, and the 6-core hyper-threaded i7-8700K is still the way to go for most games. If you're not feeling the $360 price tag, or higher depending on stock limitations, the i5-8400 looks like a gamer's price-to-performance wet dream. Beyond that, Intel's most compelling options lie in Kaby Lake with their legendary Pentium. But you'll still benefit greatly from Ryzen for most combinations of gaming and workstation, especially where performance per dollar is a central focus. I think that's all I had to say. If you like the video, give it a like. If not, give it a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe whether you like it or not, and I'll see you in the next video.